There are certain moments in the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce story that feel bigger than the headlines. Not because someone scored a touchdown. Not because Taylor walked into a stadium and instantly became the biggest story of the night. And not because Travis said something funny on a podcast. Sometimes, the moments that tell us the most about a relationship are the quiet ones. The family moments. The moments that happen when nobody is trying to create a headline. And one such moment reportedly came when Travis Kelce was spending time with his brother Jason during an episode of New Heights. The setting couldn't have been more ordinary. Two brothers. A podcast studio. Football jokes. The usual Kelce family chaos. But then Jason's young daughter, Wyatt, entered the room. And what she asked her uncle next reportedly caught Travis completely off guard. Because this wasn't a question about football. It wasn't about the Chiefs. It wasn't even about going somewhere fun. According to the source, little Wyatt looked at her uncle and asked, "Uncle Trav, can I stay with Taylor?" And suddenly, the entire mood changed. Because think about what that question actually means. To a 4-year-old, it may have been completely innocent. Simple. Straightforward. But to Travis, it apparently landed differently. This wasn't just a little girl asking to spend time with someone famous. She was asking to stay with Taylor Swift. The woman Travis has been building a relationship with. The woman who has gradually become part of the world surrounding the Kelce family. And perhaps most importantly, someone Wyatt clearly seems to adore. For Travis, that combination had to be overwhelming. Because there is a completely different kind of emotion that comes with watching someone you love connect with your family. Especially when that person isn't just your girlfriend or partner. They're becoming someone your family genuinely enjoys having around. And that's what makes this story so interesting. Because underneath all the celebrity attention surrounding Taylor and Travis is something much more ordinary. Family. Love. Little moments. And the kind of affection that can't be manufactured for cameras. If you've been following every chapter of Taylor Swift's story, this is exactly the kind of detail we love exploring here on Taylor Timeline. Because the biggest headlines are only part of the story. Sometimes, the smallest family moments tell us much more about where Taylor's life is heading. So buckle up, Swifties. Because this isn't really a story about an NFL superstar. It's a story about a little girl, the woman she clearly adores, and the reaction of the uncle standing in the middle of it all. And once you understand the history behind that relationship, Wyatt's question becomes even sweeter. Because Taylor Swift didn't simply walk into the Kelce family story overnight. There was a journey. And it started with one very public attempt from Travis to get Taylor's attention. It's easy to look at Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce today and forget how uncertain the entire story once was. Now, seeing Taylor around Travis's family can feel almost normal. Taylor at Chiefs games. Taylor spending time with his parents. Taylor becoming familiar with his inner circle. Taylor cheering from the stands. Taylor being welcomed into the Kelce world. But rewind the clock. There was a time when Travis didn't even know whether Taylor would respond to him. In fact, the beginning of their story was almost comically simple. Travis had attended one of Taylor's concerts and later talked publicly about wanting to give her a friendship bracelet containing his phone number. The problem? He never got the chance to give it to her. Taylor was performing. Travis was watching. And the opportunity passed. For most people, that might have been the end of the story. But Travis did something different. He talked about the failed attempt publicly. And suddenly, millions of people knew about it. Fans knew. Taylor knew. And eventually, the story found its way back to her. What happened afterward became one of the most recognizable modern celebrity love stories. But here's the thing. At that moment, nobody knew where it was going. Nobody knew whether Taylor would be interested. Nobody knew whether Travis was simply having fun with the idea. Nobody knew whether this would become a brief celebrity interaction or something much more serious. And certainly nobody could have predicted that one day, a little girl in the Kelce family would look at Travis and ask if she could stay with Taylor. That's the part of the story that makes the timeline so fascinating. Because relationships aren't built in one giant moment. They're built through dozens of small moments. Introductions. Family dinners. Games. Conversations. Inside jokes. Birthdays. Celebrations. Ordinary days that eventually become memories. And as Taylor's relationship with Travis developed, the public began seeing something else happening around them. Taylor wasn't only becoming closer to Travis. She was becoming increasingly familiar with his world. And Travis was entering hers. That distinction matters. Because celebrity relationships can exist almost entirely within a public bubble. Two famous people date. They attend events. They appear together. The cameras capture them. And then everyone moves on. But family integration is different. When someone starts becoming comfortable around your family, the relationship takes on another dimension. And the source's story about Wyatt appears to capture exactly that kind of moment. Because Wyatt wasn't treating Taylor like a distant celebrity. She was treating her like someone she wanted to spend time with. Someone familiar. Someone safe. Someone she liked. And that is a very different kind of connection. Now imagine Travis sitting there. He's an NFL superstar. He's spent years being comfortable in front of microphones. He's performed under enormous pressure. He's played in front of stadiums filled with tens of thousands of screaming fans. He's dealt with media scrutiny. He's handled some of the biggest moments in professional football. This is a man who is used to being watched. Used to being questioned. Used to having an answer. But then comes a question from a 4-year-old. And according to the source, it left him momentarily speechless. Can I stay with Taylor? There's something incredibly innocent about that. Wyatt wasn't thinking about Taylor's fame. She wasn't thinking about chart positions. She wasn't thinking about stadium tours. She wasn't thinking about paparazzi. To her, Taylor was simply Taylor. Someone she wanted to be around. And that may actually be the sweetest part. Because fame changes how adults see people. But children can sometimes cut through all of that. To Wyatt, Taylor wasn't necessarily the biggest pop star in the world. She was simply someone she loved spending time with. And that's what makes a moment like this resonate with fans. The public has spent years watching Taylor's career from a distance. We've watched eras come and go. We've watched songs become cultural events. We've watched her perform in stadiums. We've watched her break records. We've watched her navigate relationships under a microscope. But family doesn't necessarily see the superstar version of Taylor. They see the person. And if Wyatt genuinely feels comfortable enough to ask whether she can stay with Taylor, that says something about the environment surrounding them. Not necessarily about the future of the relationship. Not necessarily about marriage. Not necessarily about children. And certainly not proof of anything private. But it does illustrate something much simpler. Taylor appears to have become someone Wyatt feels affection for. And that is meaningful in its own right. According to the source, Travis responded with an emotional smile, essentially acknowledging how special Taylor is. And then Wyatt reportedly went on with her day, apparently unfazed by the emotional impact her question had just created. That's classic little kid behavior. Ask the biggest question imaginable. Change everyone's emotional temperature. Then walk away like nothing happened. And perhaps that's why the moment feels so genuine. There was no elaborate speech. No dramatic declaration. No perfectly staged celebrity photo. Just a little girl asking her uncle about someone she loves. And an uncle realizing just how much that person has come to mean to his family. For all the attention Travis received in this story, there's another person who deserves just as much attention. Wyatt. Because her relationship with Taylor, at least according to the source, isn't presented as something that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. There have reportedly been several moments that suggested Wyatt was already a Taylor fan. And honestly, if your uncle is Travis Kelce and your uncle's girlfriend happens to be Taylor Swift, that's a pretty extraordinary situation for any kid. Imagine being 4 years old and suddenly having access to a world of football and pop music that most adults could only dream about. Chiefs games. Taylor Swift concerts. NFL celebrations. Music. Family gatherings. And somewhere in the middle of all that is Taylor herself. It's almost impossible not to understand why a young fan might be fascinated. But there's an important distinction here. Being fascinated by Taylor Swift is one thing. Feeling comfortable around Taylor is another. And the source describes moments where Wyatt appeared increasingly comfortable with her. One example involves a Chiefs game where Taylor was sitting with the Kelce family. Instead of being separated from everyone else, Taylor was surrounded by people close to Travis. And Wyatt was reportedly nearby. The cameras captured the interaction, and fans immediately noticed the apparent warmth between them. Taylor wasn't simply acknowledging Wyatt from across the suite. The source describes her interacting with her, talking with her, and sharing a playful moment. Then came another detail that fans couldn't stop talking about: a bracelet. And if you followed Taylor Swift for any length of time, you already know that friendship bracelets have a special place in Swiftie culture. They became one of the defining symbols of the era's tour experience. Fans made them. Fans traded them. Fans wore them. And suddenly, a 4-year-old member of the Kelce family was part of that tradition too. According to the source, Wyatt gave Taylor a bracelet with the letter T spelled out in colorful beads. And Taylor reportedly wore it. That might sound like a tiny detail, but that's exactly why fans noticed it. Taylor could have received thousands of gifts. She could have been handed expensive jewelry. She could have been surrounded by luxury. But a handmade bracelet from a little girl is something completely different. It's personal. It's imperfect. It's made with intention. And for a child, giving something like that to someone you admire can mean everything. So when Taylor wore it, the gesture became bigger than the bracelet itself. It became a moment of connection. And that is why Swifties tend to remember these little details. Because Taylor's relationship with her fans has always included an appreciation for handmade, personal gestures. A bracelet, a sign in the crowd, a handwritten letter, a small gift, a fan-made costume, a reference that only longtime fans understand. Those moments create a feeling of closeness. And Wyatt wasn't simply another celebrity fan. She was part of Travis's family. That made the moment feel different. Now, this is where the story becomes bigger than one adorable interaction. Because the real question isn't simply, does Wyatt like Taylor? The bigger question is, what does it mean when Taylor begins to feel at home around Travis's family? That's something fans have been watching throughout this relationship. From the earliest public appearances, Taylor's presence around Travis's family became part of the larger story. She was photographed with members of his family. She was seen interacting with them at games. And over time, the public became increasingly familiar with those moments. That matters because Taylor has spent much of her adult life living under extraordinary public attention. Almost every personal decision can become a headline. Every relationship can become a storyline. Every appearance can be analyzed. Every interaction can be dissected. So when Taylor appears relaxed around someone's family, fans notice. Not because it automatically proves anything about the future, but because it provides a glimpse into a more personal side of her life. The football stadium may be loud. The cameras may be everywhere. The internet may be debating every expression. But family environments can be different. And that's why the Wyatt moment carries emotional weight. A little girl asking to stay with Taylor isn't about ratings. It isn't about publicity. It isn't about a red carpet. It's about affection. And perhaps that's the biggest shift in the Taylor-Travis story. The relationship began as something that fascinated the public. Then it became something the public watched. But eventually, moments like this make it feel like something that exists beyond the headlines. Again, that doesn't mean we should make assumptions about what comes next. We shouldn't turn a child's innocent question into proof of marriage. We shouldn't turn family affection into evidence of a secret plan. And we shouldn't pretend to know what Taylor or Travis privately think about their future. But we can appreciate what the moment actually shows. There appears to be warmth. There appears to be familiarity. And according to the source, there is clearly affection between Wyatt and Taylor. Sometimes that's enough. There's another reason this story became so emotionally interesting. Travis himself. For years, we've seen Travis as the larger-than-life football personality. He's loud. He's energetic. He's confident. He's playful. He's comfortable making jokes. He's comfortable taking criticism. He's comfortable walking into huge moments. That's the Travis the public knows. But family moments can reveal a completely different side of someone. And that's especially true when children are involved. Anyone who has watched the Kelce brothers together knows that family is a major part of their public identity. Jason and Travis have spent years joking about one another. They tease each other. They tell stories. They embarrass each other. They laugh. And through New Heights, fans have gotten an unusual window into their relationship. So placing Wyatt into that environment creates something completely different. She's not another guest. She's not a celebrity. She's not trying to entertain an audience. She's just a kid. And according to the source, that was enough to make Travis stop and process the moment. Think about the emotional contrast. This is a man who can stand in front of a defensive line and absorb a hit. But one sentence from his niece can completely disarm him. That's a beautiful reminder that strength doesn't always look like toughness. Sometimes strength is being deeply affected by the people you love. Sometimes the biggest emotional moments are the ones that catch you without preparation. And Wyatt's question apparently did exactly that. She wasn't trying to make a viral moment. She wasn't trying to embarrass her uncle. She was simply asking for more time with someone she cared about. And Travis had to respond. That humanizes him. Not because he's an NFL star, but because he's an uncle. There is also something fascinating about the way Taylor's presence has intersected with the Kelce family's public identity. Before Taylor and Travis became one of the most talked-about celebrity couples in the world, the Kelces were already famous. Jason had his own extraordinary NFL career. Travis had established himself as one of football's biggest stars. The brothers had built a podcast. Their family was recognizable. But Taylor's arrival changed the scale of the attention. Suddenly, a Chiefs game wasn't just a football event. Taylor might be there. A Kelce family moment wasn't simply a family moment. Fans might be watching. A photo could become a headline within minutes. And that creates a strange dynamic. The family has to navigate a level of public attention that comes with being connected to Taylor Swift. Yet the sweetest moments are often the ones that appear to exist outside that machinery. A child making a bracelet. A hug. A conversation. A laugh. A little girl asking if she can stay with Taylor. Those moments don't need a stadium. They don't need a red carpet. They don't need a performance. They're meaningful because they feel ordinary. And perhaps that's what Taylor and Travis have needed most in a relationship surrounded by extraordinary circumstances. Ordinary moments. Moments where Taylor isn't performing. Moments where Travis isn't playing football. Moments where the cameras aren't the center of attention. Just people spending time together. That is why family stories can sometimes tell us more than glamorous celebrity appearances. A red carpet tells us how someone looks. A family moment can tell us how someone fits. And according to the story we're discussing, Taylor appears to fit comfortably enough into the Kelce family world that Wyatt doesn't want her to leave. That's a pretty powerful compliment coming from a 4-year-old. Naturally, one question remains. What does Taylor think about all of this? The source speculates that Travis likely shared the adorable moment with her. But we should be careful here. We don't actually know what Taylor privately said or how she reacted unless she has publicly confirmed it. And that's an important line to maintain. Celebrity storytelling can be tempting because it's easy to fill in the blanks. We can imagine Taylor laughing. We can imagine her hugging Wyatt. We can imagine Travis calling her immediately. But imagination isn't confirmation. What we can say is that the story highlights something fans have repeatedly noticed. Taylor appears to have developed warm connections with people in Travis's world. And that makes Wyatt's affection especially sweet. Because Taylor has spent years being surrounded by people who know her because she's Taylor Swift. Wyatt is different. She may know Taylor's songs. She may know she's famous. But her affection seems to be based on something much simpler. She likes her. And that can be incredibly meaningful. There's something almost poetic about one of the world's most recognizable women being seen through the eyes of a little girl who isn't interested in her fame. Wyatt doesn't need Taylor to be a global superstar. She just wants Taylor to stay. And perhaps that's the most uncomplicated compliment Taylor could receive. Once moments like this reach the internet, fans inevitably become part of the story. And according to the source, the reaction was immediate. Some fans focused on how much Travis clearly cares about his nieces. Others focused on Wyatt's apparent affection for Taylor. And some couldn't resist imagining what might happen next. One fan reportedly joked about Travis taking Wyatt to see Taylor. Another emphasized how sweet it was to see Travis surrounded by the people he loves. And that's where the Swiftie community becomes an important part of the story. Taylor's fans don't simply follow her music. They follow eras, relationships, friendships, family connections, career decisions, fashion moments, performances, Easter eggs, and yes, even friendship bracelets. So when a little girl connected to Travis's family becomes a Taylor fan, it's almost impossible for the Swiftie community not to melt. Because the image is just so wholesome. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, a little girl, a handmade bracelet, a football family, a pop superstar. It's the kind of combination that feels almost too perfect for the internet. But the important thing is not to turn every sweet interaction into a prediction. Fans can speculate. Fans can imagine. Fans can have fun. That's part of fandom. But the actual story remains much simpler. A child appears to have formed a sweet connection with Taylor. And her uncle was touched by it. That's enough. Now we arrive at the question everyone inevitably asks. Does a moment like this tell us anything about the future of Taylor and Travis? The honest answer is, we don't know. A child's affection cannot predict a couple's future. A family interaction isn't confirmation of an engagement. And a sweet moment shouldn't automatically become evidence of marriage or children. But that doesn't mean it has no significance. Relationships become meaningful through small moments. If Taylor and Travis continue building their relationship, then moments of family connection naturally become part of that story. And seeing Taylor become someone Wyatt feels comfortable around is simply one more piece of that picture. That's all we can responsibly say. Anything beyond that becomes speculation. Still, fans can't help wondering. Could Wyatt eventually attend more Taylor events? Could she become a regular backstage visitor? Could Taylor and Travis's families become even more intertwined over time? Could there be more moments like this? Maybe. But those are future questions. And until Taylor or Travis tell us otherwise, they're just that, questions. And perhaps that's what makes following Taylor's journey so fascinating. We never know what the next chapter will look like. There's a larger theme underneath all of this. Taylor Swift's life has become so enormous that it's easy to forget how unusual her existence really is. She can walk onto a stage and have tens of thousands of people scream her name. She can release a song and have millions of people analyze every lyric. She can attend a football game and become one of the biggest stories of the entire broadcast. Her presence alone can change the conversation. But then you have a moment like this. A 4-year-old asks her uncle if she can stay with Taylor. And suddenly, Taylor isn't a superstar. She's just someone a little girl doesn't want to say goodbye to. That contrast is beautiful. Because behind the celebrity machine is still a human being. And behind the NFL superstar is still an uncle. That's why these moments matter. They remind us that Taylor's life isn't only made up of sold-out stadiums and record-breaking achievements. It's also made up of relationships, people, family, and little moments that may never make a headline unless someone happens to mention them. If you strip away all the celebrity names, this story becomes incredibly simple. A young girl likes someone. She wants to spend more time with her. She asks her uncle if she can stay. Her uncle is touched. That's it. And somehow, that's exactly why it's so powerful. Because celebrity stories often feel distant. We see glamorous photographs. We see private jets. We see stadiums. We see designer clothes. We see trophies. We see red carpets. But this moment is relatable. Every family has a child who becomes attached to someone. Every family has an aunt, uncle, cousin, or friend who becomes the favorite. Every child has asked some version of, "Can I stay?" And sometimes, the answer is no. Sometimes it's time to go home. But the question itself tells you how much the child enjoyed being there. And in this case, the person she wanted to stay with just happened to be Taylor Swift. That's what turned a simple family interaction into something fans couldn't stop talking about. Let's return for a moment to that bracelet. Because it's easy to overlook. But Taylor Swift and friendship bracelets are deeply connected in the cultural memory of the era's tour. For millions of fans, making and trading bracelets became part of the experience. It was a way of saying, "I was here. I understand this song. I'm part of this community." So when Wyatt reportedly made a bracelet for Taylor, there was something almost symbolic about it. A child giving Taylor a piece of the culture Taylor helped create. And Taylor reportedly wearing it. That's not necessarily some grand statement. It doesn't need to be. It's simply sweet. And sometimes, the smallest gestures carry the most emotional weight. Because a handmade bracelet doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't need a designer label. It doesn't need a security team. It doesn't need a camera crew. It only needs meaning. And for Wyatt, that bracelet apparently meant something. For fans, seeing Taylor wear it made the moment even more memorable. Taylor Swift news is often intense. A new album announcement can dominate social media. A surprise appearance can create headlines. A relationship rumor can spread across the internet within minutes. A single photograph can trigger thousands of theories. But every once in a while, a story comes along that isn't really about controversy or speculation. It's just sweet. And that's what this appears to be. There's no need to manufacture drama. No villain. No feud. No scandal. No shocking betrayal. Just Travis Kelce's niece expressing that she wants to spend time with Taylor Swift. And honestly, that's refreshing. Because Taylor's life has been analyzed from nearly every possible angle. Her music. Her relationships. Her friendships. Her business decisions. Her public appearances. Her career. Her personal life. But sometimes fans don't need another controversy. Sometimes they just want a wholesome moment. And this is exactly that kind of story. For Travis, there may be something particularly meaningful about seeing his family connect with Taylor. Because when you're in a relationship with someone who receives as much attention as Taylor Swift, the relationship can become overwhelming. Everything gets amplified. At the end of the day, maybe the sweetest thing about this story isn't Taylor Swift. And maybe it isn't Travis Kelce either. Maybe it's the innocence of Wyatt. Because the world sees Taylor through a completely different lens. We see the superstar, the performer, the songwriter, the billionaire, the record breaker, the woman whose every appearance can become a global headline. But a 4-year-old may see something much simpler. Someone she likes. Someone she wants to spend time with. Someone she doesn't want to say goodbye to. And in a world where Taylor Swift's life is constantly surrounded by cameras, speculation, headlines, and millions of opinions, that kind of affection feels almost wonderfully uncomplicated. It doesn't matter how many albums Taylor has sold. It doesn't matter how many stadiums she's filled. It doesn't matter how many awards sit on her shelves. To Wyatt, the question is much simpler. Can I stay with Taylor? And perhaps that's the real reason this little moment hits so differently. Because underneath all the fame, there are still people. There are still families. There are still children who make innocent requests. There are still uncles who get emotional when the people they love connect. And there are still moments that remind us that even the biggest celebrities in the world can experience something completely ordinary. A family moment. A laugh. A bracelet. A goodbye. A little girl who doesn't want to leave. Taylor Swift's story has always been about eras. But the most meaningful eras aren't always defined by what happens on stage. Sometimes they're defined by the people standing beside you when the cameras aren't rolling. And whatever comes next for Taylor and Travis, one thing is clear from this story. The people around them matter. The relationships they build matter. And sometimes, the smallest moments become the ones fans remember the longest. So if you're a Swiftie who wants to follow every chapter, not just the giant headlines, but the little moments, the family stories, the emotional details, and everything happening around Taylor's incredible journey, this is exactly what we do here at Taylor Timeline. Subscribe and come along for the next chapter. Because with Taylor Swift, there is always another story. Always another era. And somehow, always another moment we never saw coming.